Cassandra, where are you from originally? Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Long Island, New York.
And you grew up with both your parents?
No, I didn't. Actually, I didn't grow up in Long Island. I was born in New York, but I grew up in Michigan. My first, the story they used to tell about me, my first memory was, come to find out, my dad married my mom. She was pregnant with another man's kid. So I'm technically the firstborn. The story goes, my dad was in the Navy. He's a nuclear physicist. He was on nuclear submarines. My mother must have been beautiful. The only thing I've been told about her, though, is that she was stacked. But he walked away from a full scholarship to Notre Dame. Anyway, I guess when he got off being away for a few months, he came to my mother's house, and with my mom on his arm and my baby sister Monique, who was 3 months old. His parents already had my older sister Dana and said, "Mom, she cheated on me." And he left, and my mom kept me. About a year and a half later, my grandparents said I was dropped off on their doorstep in a dirty diaper with a man's shirt on and no shoes in the middle of winter. And we had steak for dinner that night. And 4 hours later, we had dessert. I had something in my mouth. I had saved all my chewed up meat because I said I wanted to eat later. I think that's the saddest fucking story I ever heard. But they would laugh about it and tell it at the dinner table. I felt like the odd man out. I feel guilty, kind of, talking about it, because I feel like I feel guilty even talking about why I feel guilty. But I feel like our society covets a level of attractiveness or slenderness, and being the middle child. Also, I got special treatment from strangers, and my dad, he married my stepmother when I was 6, and he married her basically to take care of his problem, which was the 3 of us, me and my 2 sisters, and moved us to Long Island. And I remember I was very angry at my grandparents' house, and I kind of digressed, but after I got there, every day my grandma would tell me, "Your mom's not coming back, she doesn't love you." And when my dad would come home at dinner time, I had to say that my mom didn't love me and she wasn't coming back. And I refused to say it, so I had to go to bed without dinner and I would get a spanking. We did this for about 2 years. Obviously not a good alliance to have. She never did come back. So I don't know what was worse, like the screaming for her in my head or the silence when I forgot she existed, because silence has a sound too. But when we moved to Long Island, Dana and Monique, they were so traumatized because my dad's parents were the only parents they had known. And I remember thinking to myself how lucky I was that Grandma and Grandpa didn't love me, because whether it was true or not, it doesn't matter. That was my feelings about it. But I felt like...
Let's let the siren go back.
Am I talking too much? Am I saying too much?
No, you're perfect. No, I wanted to let the siren go back because it just drowns out whatever you're going to say. So you were saying?
I remember thinking that, and my little sister Monique started wetting the bed, and she would just wake up from a nap and come down to the kitchen, and tears would just be streaming down her eyes, and she didn't even know she was crying. And that was when my stepmom started hitting us. She would call us disgusting, and she would withhold food as a punishment. So we would eat food out of the trash. So we were called liars and thieves when she would catch us. There's a line from a song where he says, "The reasons all have run away, but the feeling never did." So that feeling of being guilty and unwanted. But when we were in Long Island, about 2 weeks, I had a dream about a guardian angel, and his name was Michael, and he said that I wouldn't meet him again, but that I had other guardian angels, and my job was to take care of my 2 sisters, and that bad things were going to happen to me in my life. And he wanted to apologize for that, but said that God didn't create us to make us love him. So there were certain things he could control and certain things that he couldn't. It was very vivid. I woke up my sister and told her about it. And oddly enough, one of the last things my mother ever said to me was, "Just remember, Cassie, God shrink-wrapped your heart. They can take everything else, and men will touch you, but God shrink-wrapped your heart." So, I don't know. During that period of time, I didn't know my dad that well, and I wish I had. But I remember my stepmother went back to Michigan for a couple days, and my father was left to care for us. Now, he had me when he was 20, so you can imagine he was a young man. He would have been, 25 at this time. But we were playing on the floor. It was one of the first times I really spent time with him alone. And I remember he pinched me so hard that it left like a blood blister, and I felt so offended. It was such a strange thing. It's a strange story to tell. But after that, I kind of stayed away from him. We got hit every day. My stepmom started having her own kids, and Dana and Monique were increasingly called fat and ugly. We weren't allowed to go in the store with her because she was too beautiful to have children like us or as old as us. And we moved back to Michigan. I always say that I'm not mad, but I don't think about it. I won't think about it longer than 5 seconds. My 2 sisters, they hate, and they hate beautifully. They're married. They have good lives. My older sister has 2 master's degrees. My younger sister got accepted to all these amazing colleges. But it's a daily thing where they speak about our childhood and blame them singularly. That doesn't work for me. I find it's hard to sustain. If I think about it longer than 30 seconds, the rage is so intense. I think I can't handle it. When I was 13 and a half, my dad was arrested for child abuse against me, specifically. And, my stepmother had she'd broke my older sister's nose 4 times. Food was always withheld as a punishment. I used to have to take my clothes off before I left for school, and when I came back, she would physically put her fingers inside me to see if I had was bringing anything home. Like a candy bar wrapper or So my father took it to trial. That day, they estimated he hit me about 60 times with the buckle end of a belt, and then an hour and a half went by, he was still mad, so he did it another 50 times, shattered my tailbone, and that night my clothes scabbed to me. But I didn't cry until I collapsed on the floor and said, please don't hit me again, which is so embarrassing. And he said, I'm going to hit you like this every day that you're grounded. So I ran away that night. And I went to school for the first time, and I went to school the next day. I had never missed a day of school. My principal said, you're not allowed to be here. He had called the police. I was so terrified. He's going to get in so much trouble. They were going to relinquish me to him, but a female teacher demanded a female officer. I didn't make a statement. I never told, but the injuries spoke for themselves. He took it to trial. The day of the trial, he asked me to lie for him. They ended up keeping me in the house. They sent me to live with my grandfather, who said I was a whore and couldn't stay there. And but the day of the trial, in the cafeteria, the family's on one side, me and him are on the other. And he says, how do I feel about destroying everybody's life and that he was going to go to jail? And I said, how does it feel to have your freedom in the hands of somebody that you said was so worthless? And that's one of the things I'm most proud of, that I had the wherewithal to know to say that. If I ever feel bad, I can remember that. And I did lie for him.
Just let the siren go by. No, they stopped.
One thing, though, I had a severe stuttering problem that started when I was about 6 years old. Very, very bad. Most people don't know this about me. Really bad. Every word. It was incapacitating. And when they put me on the stand, I couldn't say my name. Now as an adult, I go by Cassandra, but I couldn't say Cassandra. I could only say Cassie. And I was supposed to state my full name for the court. And the judge was a female. She said, I can't believe you're going to put her through this. Like, why didn't he just accept the plea bargain? But I did lie for him, and I left the next day. I've never been back. But after I left,
Here, let's let this go by.
I have to say, I had a social worker. Can I say her name? Janine McFarland.
Sure.
She was so amazing. This is in Detroit, you know? And she found me. Janine found me until I was 30 years old, and she would send me a gift. And I mean, we're talking, she showed up in like 3-carat diamond earrings and a mink coat and drove a Mercedes. That was very unusual. When I was 15, I was bullied really bad in school. Really, really bad. In fact, I came to a point before the trial where I stopped seeing colors. I was really scared. I was left for dead in the snow by 2 girls. They put cigarettes out on me. I always say the quickest way to sober me up is put me in a room with fucked up people. The worst thing I could think of to do to say I was upset was smoke cigarettes. But I remember I grew up in a good neighborhood, if you will. But the kids from the wrong side of the tracks, their parents didn't ask, why is this girl here on a school night? But I have no idea why I got so fortunate. I knew there were drugs all around, but I didn't see them, and I stayed away from them. But somebody's trashy mother called somebody's girl's girl that I was with this boy, and I had yet to even get that far with a boy. But a group of people came and 3 girls beat me up and took all my clothes, put cigarettes on me. When I came to, they said that the street's that way. I knocked on 7 doors. It was about 7:30 at night before someone opened their door.
How old were you?
15. And I just remember coming in and out of consciousness, bleeding all over this, it was a young couple, all over their bathroom, and I kept saying, I'm really not white trash. And then my dad was in the doorway. I said, how did you know who my dad was? And they said, you told us. After they put me back in the house, no one was allowed to call me Cassie. Everybody had to call me stupid. I was no longer a part of the family. The hitting stopped, but it was on. It was a war. And Dana and Monique, they got it the worst. Dana got it really bad, like being beat up. I remember my parents rarely ever went out, but the Christmas cookie story. They went out during the holidays once, and we never had house keys, or we were not allowed to open the fridge or touch the television or the radio, nothing. We didn't have keys to the house, because remember, we were liars and thieves. We might eat food. So we're waiting in the garage. We would come home from school, and on the door to the garage leading into the house is, "Yous guys," my stepmother would use that word, "better get your story straight. There were 32 Christmas cookies, and when we got home last night, there were 22. Somebody's going to get it. You better, whoever did it, better step forth." Dana starts wailing. Monique's like, "Oh God," and I remember saying, okay, almost like Ferris Bueller's Day Off, right? I'll take the heat. My stepmother, that Aerostar minivan pulls up. She doesn't ask who did it. She just gets out, she grabs Dana by the hair and takes her in the kitchen and just starts banging her head against the stove. I'm terrified. And that's when I realized it didn't have to do with the Christmas cookies. It was just rage she wanted to take out on anyone. I remember running to the phone and saying, I thought she was going to kill Dana. "I'm going to call 911. My stepmother just grabbed the phone out of my hand and hit me over the head with it and said, "You're not calling anyone." That was a valuable lesson. My 2 sisters, no one grows up wanting to be a liar or a drug addict or promiscuous. But I don't. I feel fortunate. I learned very early on that the goalposts were constantly changing, and I was taught how to be a good liar. I likened my stepmother to like a big ogre, and you could see when the rage would start. Who was in the refrigerator, or who didn't take out the trash. If you went to the bathroom or left number 2, you'd have to go into the bathroom and stand there until someone said who did it for hours. Like, well, why not just flush the toilet? I mean, I don't even know what any of this means. I haven't never revisited this. But if you lied to my stepmother, then it would the momentum of the punch wouldn't be as it wouldn't hurt as bad. If you were like, "Look over there," it would confuse her almost. So, and if you recall, I have a different father than my older sister Dana. There's a picture of us, even though we're almost. My older sister is almost exactly a year older, and my little one almost exactly a year younger, and we all shared a room. But in this photograph, I am up to Dana's shoulder, and she has her arm around me. Dana was much larger than me, but more of a gentle soul and more fearful, anxiety-ridden. I would say and Donna would go for her, and we'd say, "Dana, hit her back." We just weren't big enough. Donna's like 5'11". She'd be terrifying today. But what was I saying?
You mentioned earlier on, before we started the cameras, that you were molested at some point?
Yes. After I left after the trial, I didn't even have a winter coat, and I would sit in the breezeway of this restaurant. After about a month, a man gave me a roll of dimes and said to call someone. I looked in the yellow pages and I remembered my mother's maiden name, and I found her sister, who came and picked me up. The first thing she asked was, "What kind of cigarettes do you smoke?" And I hadn't really even learned how to inhale, but I just looked down and she smoked Virginia Slims. I said, "I smoke those." She said, "What a coincidence," and went and got me a pack. They were drug addicts.
How old were you?
Almost 16, 15 and a half. She had a son. He was 20 years older. He was my cousin. I'd never met him. But she put me in his bedroom. I thought she didn't know. But now I realize she put me in his bedroom so he'd come home with the drugs. And it was, you do as we do, or you don't stay here. I mean, it's hard to express. It's hard to draw a picture, but we had no furniture, much like crackheads. My cousin was a gaffer, so I always slept on the floor. We had a spool as our coffee table and director's chairs, and then we had a chalkboard to keep track if anybody double-toked. This is pot. We had the SWAT team come into our house, actually. But that first night that I was there, on the floor in his bedroom, my cousin got out of his bed and laid down next to me behind me. And I still had never, the most I had done was kiss a boy. So he took my choice to choose. He didn't do it that night. He was, as far as predators go, he made it seem, I lied to myself as if I was a participant in it. It changes things. This is really hard for me to talk about. And it's really scary. I guess it creates certain proclivities in your life. I'm not going to explain what that means, but I'm sure you can look up the word.
It's okay. You don't want to talk about it, you don't have to.
I guess he took what he took, and I didn't want to sit at that bus stop like a survivor of being molested, so I just told myself some story. But then I was off at the races. I became a pot addict. And that's an underrated addiction. I smoked pot every day for 5 years. I'll tell you what. Like I said, God was my only friend, so I cried myself to sleep for maybe 2 years, wanting to get out. And can we take a break?
Sure.
Small break. I guess to be able, I didn't tell my aunt. I felt like that, just to protect her. I hadn't smoked pot before, and I remember telling a girl next door after 2 weeks of being there, I can't keep doing this, Come to find out, my aunt had taken my dad to court, and she was getting money from him. She never so much as bought me a pair of underwear. At first she told me, you're not going to school anymore. You're going to watch Dylan, which is my cousin's son, who was 7. We got evicted from every place, so I went from an upscale neighborhood to basically the Skid Row of Michigan. We ended up in Redford Union, 8 Mile. There was a shower downstairs in one of the places that we rented. It was an unfinished basement, and I'll never forget this. I came downstairs and I hear my little cousin, who's 8 years old, sobbing, going, "Why me, God, why me?" in the shower. I did, prior to her pulling me out of school, I did end up going to high school for about 3 weeks at a place at high school called Redford Union on 8 Mile. Yes, where Eminem hails from. And two events happened. I ended up meeting the cutest boy in school whose girlfriend was on a family vacation, but no one thought to tell me. And the principal there, he had me in his office and he asked me to unbutton my shirt for him. And that stayed with me forever for a number of reasons. That wasn't in my file, anything about me, about sexual abuse. How did he know that I wouldn't tell? From then on, I felt like everybody knew, like I was wearing a scarlet letter. Everybody knew that I was being molested. And this is only one of the few times in my life I've ever vocalized that, or allowed myself to. I'm a very compartmentalized person. And I don't consider myself a liar. And if I ever do lie, it's because I've probably lied to myself as well. But how could he have known I wouldn't tell? And did I comply? Yes. I found power from it in a way. On the flip side, the downside was a billion miles deep. But after, I felt like I had no choice, so I lied to myself as if I did in the moment. And what I was telling myself was, so Dad, you said I was so worthless? Well, guess what? I can make this person risk everything. So how worthless am I? If I can bring this person to their knees. Whatever somebody thinks of that is neither here nor there. It is what it is, as far as then. And I maybe only know this now looking back. But after Maurizio's girlfriend got back, we were living, of course, renting a place made of Kleenex and spit. There was maybe 40 girls outside calling for my head. Terrifying. So no, I never went back to school after that. But I did have one friend, Tamara, who worked at Taco Bell. Shortly thereafter, the SWAT team came into our house. My cousin Dugan was selling pot out of the house. My aunt would send me with him to the tip of Florida, where we would drive there and back in 3 days. He would put the bricks of marijuana above the engine. He would use a gaffer's blanket. Yeah, so when the SWAT team came in, you know, get down, get down, get down. This girlfriend, Tamara, she was about 350 pounds and she worked at Taco Bell. The police kept calling her the big burrito. She's like, she wasn't gonna get down. But they took us all to jail and then they proceeded to tell me that if I didn't buy drugs from 3 people 3 times with marked money, I was gonna go to prison. They had photographs of me opening the door. Wow, this is so embarrassing. When I was 13 and a half, when 9th grade first started, you were allowed to leave campus for school, and there was this man, Todd Caribbean. He was probably 36 years old, but he would hang outside the pizza place. And some of my girlfriends knew him. Of course, the girls from the wrong side of the tracks. But when I would run away from home, he would put me in a hotel room. But so when I had to buy these drugs with marked money, I bought drugs from friends of his that weren't really drug dealers. And I really only bought 2 times from one person. Shortly thereafter, I run into Todd again. He takes me to a party. And we start playing quarter bounce around 7 o'clock. By 8, I was extremely inebriated and I was taken upstairs and gang raped. When he came in the bedroom, they had me tied up. He asked me about his friend whose house the police came into and how it was right after I asked him to sell me drugs, and then he walked out of the door. I remember I kept coming in and out of reality, and I was begging them to stop. There maybe were 8 or 10 college guys. One of the boys' sisters comes in and sees this and gets hysterical. She puts me in the shower, and I was just ashamed to be alive. I was just ashamed. I guess I was ashamed that I was ashamed for myself, ashamed that I was there, that I was a person. Years later, let me try to get this succinct. My aunt, right, she was an executive secretary. So as we got evicted from all these places, she would get a job as an executive secretary. She'd been married 8 times. So the gentleman that she had been with previous, they actually had a home that was in town and country, but he ended up leaving her for her best friend who could still have children. So she had this wardrobe. But I guess she was telling her other men she worked with that she had a daughter and she needed assistance and maybe they would like to go on a date with me. I didn't quite understand it. I know it sounds like a dichotomy, I feel so blessed, but Rafi Derbabian takes me to a hotel room and says, I can't do this. And I say, do what? And he tells me how my aunt has insinuated fully that he could have sex with me for the $800 that he gave her to help us with our rent money. I don't even know what to think about this now. I've never repeated that. My voice is, I've never heard those words. And I feel strangely, I guess I can't put anything into it. I met one of these men. I never did have sex with any of these men. And I blocked out a lot of it. To me, it was just a handful. One of these men took me to his friend's house in a place called Bloomfield Hills, which was the Bel Air of Michigan. His friend had a hot tub where everybody had to take their clothes off. This person was married and owned the company where my aunt was the executive secretary. So I guess he wanted to see me naked. But his friend, his name was Michael. He was 31 years old, nice Jewish boy, my size. And me and him, he really liked me. He was single, and I liked him too. So he asked if he could take me out on a date. So we started going out. I never said anything about what was happening at our house, and he never asked. I remember like our 3rd date, he takes me to his home. I had never seen anything so beautiful. Now mind you, I'd grown up in a nice neighborhood, but it had been 2 years that I had been, in the Skid Row of Michigan, and if you can imagine driving down a boulevard, take here in California, for example, in Los Angeles, imagine driving down Sunset Boulevard. Imagine Sunset in Alvarado, which is even not the best example, but take Sunset all the way past the Bel Air Hotel, how everything gets green and it opens up. And we take that drive, it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my whole life. It's so beautiful. I remember that there was a world again. But he made me his special pasta dish. I guess in the broccoli, he had made a smiley face, 2 eyes and a smile out of broccoli. But I just started eating first thing. And he was so offended and hurt that I hadn't waited to see the smile in the pasta. There's gotta be some answer there in that, right? But after dinner, I take off my clothes and try to have sex with him, and he was really freaked out. I don't know why I'm mentioning this, but it was significant because it just speaks to his character. Like, slow down. That wasn't what he wanted to do, you know? And so we didn't. Mind you, he was the first person that I had tried to do that with since I was gang raped. That, I kind of going backwards a bit, but that morning when I woke up with throw up in my hair, and I was in the shower, I swore I would never have sex with anyone again. And I fought off my cousin after that. So things were coming to a head, a real head. Going back to Michael, he started taking me to hippie festivals, and he got me to drop acid with him, which I would never take back. I would never do it again, but I would never take that back. I did it maybe 6 or 7 times. And I've been told that it bridges the conscious to the subconscious. And my experience, I didn't see pink elephants, but I saw how beautiful the world was, and just how the way I grew up was just no way to live. And there was something more. That said, I know that Michael knew a lot more, and he never asked, I never told. But one day after going to a wedding, and we had been drinking, and the night before we had taken acid, I come home to get changed for another event that we're going to go to. And my cousin is, at this point, he's now obsessed with me, calling me a whore and a slut and a bimbo. This is going on every day. He's violent, following me. His advances have become very, very violent, trying to rape me. And I just walked out the door and walked all the way to Michael's house. And he opens the door and he said, you're not leaving. You're here to stay, right? He just knew, and I said, yes. And we made a bowl of mashed potatoes. And we were so nervous. We sat on the counter cross-legged and ate the mashed potatoes. And then we went across the street. There was this beautiful school, and there was a swing set. We sat on the swing set, and the sun was setting, and it was the most beautiful day I'd ever seen. And I thought, this is the first day of my life. No one's ever gonna hit me again. No one's ever gonna touch me again. No one's ever gonna call me a name. It's over now, it's finally over. It was one of the greatest moments of my life. So I'd like to be buried. So, that was my first home. And it lasted maybe 2.5 years. And that's where I quit smoking pot. Like I said, I cried myself to sleep for 2 years. I carried that addiction into that relationship. My little sister called, Monique. Monique. So while Monique's getting written up in the newspaper and living at Grandpa's, because remember, I was a whore, I couldn't live at Grandpa's. I'm getting raped violently at night by my cousin. Monique calls me to tell me that she's gotten into the AmeriCorps, the Domesticated Peace Corps. I say, Monique, will you come see me before you go away? And she says, Cassie, I have a life. And I hung up the phone, and I looked around me, and I thought, God doesn't exist. I've been talking to no one this whole time. There's no one. And I just panicked. I had my first panic attack, and I ended up at the hospital. Well, I started getting anxiety attacks every single day. I ended up at the hospital. They offered me a Xanax, and I had taken acid. So it was January the 3rd, 1997. But so New Year's Eve I had, and I thought, this is an acid flashback. This is it. You know, I'm fucked for life. I went to 4 therapists, and of course, the most expensive one. I'm almost going to remember his name. Stan something or another. He said, "Are you hearing voices, kid?" I said, "No." He said, "Do you feel like driving into oncoming traffic?" I said, "No." He said, "You're going to be fine." The one before him said, "Well," I said, "Michael smoked," I had just smoked pot previous to hanging up the phone. And I said to her, "Well, Michael smoked the same pot too," because I thought maybe it was laced with something. She said, "Well, if you drink from a carton of milk, only one person's going to get the swallow with a spider." I remember calling her up later, telling her how irresponsible that statement was. The reason for a lot of my worry was, turns out my mother was a paranoid schizophrenic. But turns out, that's a diagnosis from the state to get money. So who really knows if she was really a paranoid schizophrenic? And they can't test for schizophrenia. It shows up between the ages of 19 and 22. So I've never been diagnosed as crazy, unfortunately. I was raised to get married. For 9 years, I had slept with 3 men. And I remember being at Barney's, and this will bring us up to closer to as I sit, yes, with a black Amex, my name on it. The bills didn't go to me, and I've never said I love you for money. And I couldn't find one thing to buy. So, growing up, we didn't have any, you couldn't have any heroes. We weren't allowed to listen to music or touch the television. You know, this is in Michigan, you're in a suburb. Really all I wanted to do was be a lady. I read every Miss Manners book. I wanted to be a lady, I wanted to play the piano, and I wanted to run track. So kind of like a side note, after I was refused piano lessons, but all 3 of those boyfriends, they all played the piano, and each one had one in their home, and I never once sat down and played it. I ended the relationship with Mark. I gave him back the ring. It was a 5-carat diamond. People thought I was crazy. The only thing any of the men I've loved have had in common is they've all pulled themselves up by their bootstraps. But I felt like, for some reason, if I married him, I'd be dead in 6 months. And I wasn't even a drug addict yet. 9 months after the first panic attack, and I was getting them every day, I met my second boyfriend, who was in a rock band, and he was into his 25th year of being a cocaine addict and an alcoholic. And I had my first drink with him. By the 3rd one, my heart stopped pounding, and I started drinking, and I drank every day for 8 years. So, it was very bad. I have been written off for dead many times. And in the end, I ended up with a DUI. My liver was shutting down. I passed the field test, but I blew over a .2. They took me straight to the hospital. And I guess quitting drinking is one of the only things that can kill you. You can die from that. And I was at that point. So I begged a check from my ex-fiance to see a foremost psychiatrist. And I do not know why our meeting went the way it did, but when I got to his office, and I was very straight-laced, buttoned up, he said, sit anywhere. Maybe he didn't like where I chose to sit, but I said, you know, I can't seem to stop drinking, but if I do, I'm very concerned about having seizures. What, if anything, can you give me to prevent that? He said, well, first of all, I think you need a 12-step program. And secondly, I think you sexualize situations, and you probably always will. I mean, even as I speak it, I can hardly believe it. What is everything? It took me a decade and a half to convince myself. No one can tell that you were molested, Cassie. You know, it's just in your head. The 2 or 3 people I ever told about it, you know, had close friends, had convinced me of the same, and I was just starting to kind of move forward in my life. And that kind of tore all that down. But right now, in this conversation, it's neither here nor there. About 2 months later, I finished everything I needed to do for the DUI. Mind you, the classes were at 8:30 at night, and that was my morning. Except going to the 15 AA meetings. I'd never even heard of that place. But I ended up on a mattress. I went out every night for 8 years. I wake up on a mattress on the floor, and it's 3 o'clock in the morning. The room is so dark, I can't even see my hand in front of my face, and there's no alcohol in the house. And I have the DTs. I'm shaking, I'm sweating. You know, my mind knows it's not real, but I can feel and see the devil. I say to this other body next to me in the dark, I think I'm gonna have to go to the hospital. And they said, well, you're walking. And all of a sudden, I heard this voice in my ear. It said, Cassie, just quit. And it was like they were speaking in another language, just quit, like I'd never heard those 2 words ever before. And this feeling of calm came over me. And I said to this other human in the darkness, I think I'm gonna go to that AAAA place tomorrow. And they said, well, you're going alone. I looked it up the next day, and I went, and I took the burning desire, and I said, yes, some would say I'm an alcoholic, because in the beginning of the meeting, they asked, are you an alcoholic? And I didn't respond. But at the end, I said, yes, I am. And I didn't drink again for 4 years. I used to think God wants me bad. Yeah, I did that. Then I decided to pick up a cocaine addiction. I had been a cocaine addict earlier in my life from one of the times when my aunt needed money, she sold me to the guy across the hall. And he was probably in his second decade as a serious coke addict. And I remember somebody moving into the complex who turned out to be, his name was Randy Tarnow. He was an attorney that had been disbarred, so he became a commercial real estate, industrial law, something like that. But somebody moved into the complex whom he went to college with. His wife had just left him. And I remember him taking his first line of coke since college. 6 months later, he's carpet farming. He's in the carpet looking for pieces of cocaine, which I now know he was looking for crack. And I had Michael, that first boyfriend, buy some cocaine for us, and he had never done cocaine. We were getting it every other day for the first 3 months. And I remember him looking up at me after snorting a line off of that Radiohead CD, Pablo Honey, and asking me, do I look cool? And I said, we're never doing coke again, because I remembered that guy crawling around on the carpet. I didn't want that kind of blood on my hands. But after quitting the drinking, I had a long way back. And I was barely there when I got this pretty big job. And everyone thought I was going to fail at it. Around the same time, a neighbor asked me if I knew where to get some cocaine. And I called a friend and found out who delivered. And I decided to get myself a gram. Cocaine's an anesthetic. So I knew everything that was happening, but I felt nothing. And that's what I wanted. During that period of time, the inside of my nose fell out. So I was snorting about 2 grams a day, which went up to an 8 ball. And for about a month, I couldn't even breathe. I couldn't get more coke up my nose. Until one day, something came out of my nose, and it was a chunk of cartilage, basically. This was terrifying. I couldn't stop snorting, and my nose was falling out. A friend of mine, a DJ in Ibiza, went deaf and blind from his cocaine use. Also, during the entire time that I'm a coke addict, I continue to go to AA meetings. I go late, I leave early, I sit in the back and say nothing. Not wanting to accept that I'm going to be a cocaine addict, always. So I just felt so isolated, so alone. And I got a serious sinus infection, and I called my gynecologist because he knew about my weight loss. And I flew back from San Francisco I was there for work, to see a specialist who never used the word cocaine but said, you need to stop the medication immediately and remove the inside of my nose. Okay, I'm just gonna say it. Around that time I met somebody, and it was a gated community in Calabasas. He was recording an album. He had a giant bowl with all these white chunks in it, and he said, this isn't really, I hate the word crack. Why do they say crack is a poor man's drug? This stuff, I mean, so basically you take the stuff you get, right? And then you cook it, and then you only end up with half, I'm telling you. He smoked from a bong. Well, I'll just say, I would have some help from some gentleman friends. And we'll just stick to the straight and narrow on this. Somebody introduced me to him in the capacity of maybe we would hit it off to enjoy an evening together. And I get to his home, and he's in a bathrobe. He's got cash in one pocket, like Scarface, a gun in the other. And there's all these girls around with really bad skin. There's contractors there that are doing something and putting swirly cues on his windows. You know, a lot happening. I now know is a real crackhead trait. Not because I'm a crackhead, or allegedly. I'm sorry, this is really uncomfortable. It's not like I lie, but by omission. But if you don't tell the truth, if you don't know where you stand, you don't know where you'll land, right? But this madam, if you will, says this is the third person that I ever met through her. And she said, oh, you know, don't expect, you know, he's a party person, $100, $200. And we get there, and he asked me, how much? I said, 1,000. And he looks at me up and down. He says, okay. He has her leave and closes the door. And then he says, you're not really a hoe, are you? And I was so embarrassed. I never heard anybody like use that word or like speak to me in that way, you know? I mean, like I said, I lie to myself, you know? I'm always arguing with my best friend. There's a difference between hamburger meat and filet mignon, and he says prostitution is prostitution. I guess I've come a long way that I can even say that word. this is an unmarried guy. I mean, I carried on so much shame about that. That's a whole other story. But that's how I learned about crack. And but his first statement was, this isn't crack. This is cocaine and I cook it. So it's cocaine. But isn't that crack? But anyway, we smoked from a bong. And he didn't have any powder I could snort. It took me about a year before I started actually buying crack. I resent you for getting me to say it. No one got me to say it. My own free will. I only had one cocaine dealer, and he said to me, I can get you hard. We never use the word crack, just hard cocaine. And I mean, I guess in some ways you could look at it like a blessing, because even after I finally stopped snorting, cartilage still kept falling out, still kept coming out of my nose. I could put a finger all the way in the back, and it would take a week for whatever it was to come out. Oh, wow, wow, wow. But yeah, so I started smoking crack, and I hid it from people intuitively. I knew to hide it from people. Around that time, you know, I had too much money and too much grief, pretty much self-indulgent grief, over some other things. So my dealer leaves a gram of heroin over, shows me how to smoke it, although he didn't smoke it. And you know, I'll be darned if I didn't. It's really not that easy when you first start chasing the dragon, if you will, to get it to roll up the tin foil. You know, you gotta kind of point the tin foil this way. I'm telling you, it's kind of difficult. But I got the hang of it and just took on another addiction. So I was smoking 2 grams of heroin a day, besides the crack. And then I found that bongs were not easy to transport. One day, my regular dealer is out of town, so he sends somebody over who comes with 30 packages all wrapped up in little squares. And I think, is this what I'm gonna become? Like, what kind of drugs are you on that you wrapped these things up in little squares? What am I supposed to do with this? I now know that's a dub. But that freaked me out so badly, I called my best friend. I gave him a number of somebody in AA and said, this is what's been happening. I need to check myself in somewhere, because I need to want to quit. And in 6 hours, I found myself in this bougie rehab. I'll say, let's bring us to today. If I'm honest, okay. I've always I smoke heroin. I do cocaine. The last AA meeting I went to, which was 7 years ago, I took the Burning Desire and said, I know you gotta have 24 hours before you can share, but it's been 5 years. So I'm just gonna say, you know, I can't stop doing drugs and my nose is falling out. In my walk-in closet, that's where I would go to try to, if someone was over, it was so loud trying to blow my nose or get whatever was in there out. And I think I'm gonna die, and I just left. I think I did say, you people set the bar so low you could trip over it. The last conversation I had with my little sister, she asked me how I wanted to be buried. She's never even seen me do these drugs. I started, anyway, when I always thought that if I ever asked for help, that it would be there, that I've been paying into that. I never cried wolf. And it's kind of like seeing a fire extinguisher every day. And not only when you break the glass do you realize that it's empty, it's not even a real fire extinguisher, it's like a blow-up fire extinguisher. And when I had been an alcoholic, I sought out help for that, looking for a facility. They were quoting me $30,000, $50,000. And now, mind you, it was a little bit of a different time. And also you need round-the-clock care. So I didn't know anything about a place that was free or something of that nature. And I thought every rehab was that. I didn't know it was mostly indigenous to just alcohol. So I go to this rehab. It was a horrible experience. I remember one of the facilitators calling me in her office and saying, you know, if you want to dress like that every single day, you know, that's fine. But if you just want to be seen as, you know, someone that's, you know, just shallow and is just good for nothing but being on somebody's arm, I mean, that's fine. That's up to you. You know, just because we don't have 600 thread count sheets here doesn't mean that we can't help you. And I'm sitting there. I'm so exhausted. This is what this woman is saying to me. You know, I mean, I called in maybe the only favor I ever had in my life to get this, like, $32,000 to get to this place, to realize I'm the only one that paid any money, and they have these scholarships, and they're also charging my insurance $10,000 a month, and she's talking to me about thread count on sheets. Come to find out, the guy, Chris Betham, was arrested 3 years later for possession and insurance fraud. Yeah, I ended up losing 2 Mac computers and my iPhone and my hard drive. Some little boy toy I'd been fooling around with put a security pin on my phone so that payment couldn't be accepted for my phone, and I was there one day prior to 90, so I lost the phone number I had for 15 years. I think I had mentioned a little bit about having had mentors, gentlemen that helped greatly financially in my life. So the loss of me not being able to call out, my phone not being able to call in, yeah, it was of epic proportions. And after, basically I lost everything. So after I fled from that place, people were so, I gotta tell you, people were pretty thrilled to, now maybe Cassie will be off her high horse. I didn't know I was on such a high horse, really. Come to find out, my dealer's been sent away on a mandatory vacation, jail. Of course, as soon as I got out, the first thing I wanted to do was use, but I had learned some stuff in rehab about CAVI and what words to use and possibly how to go score, which I had been ignorant of. I gave up my apartment to go to this place, thinking I needed a whole fresh new start. So when I get out, I end up staying with an old boyfriend. But I go down, I start to travel down towards the Skid Row area. And I think I had like $150 in my pocket. I'm going from Wilshire to Western, but I get to Alvarado. They look at me like I'm crazy. By the time I get down to 5th and Broadway, you know, I mean, I think this is just the most horrible place this is as far as I've ever been. But now I'm down to what, like $60 because I'm giving someone $10 to show me where like the Dove is. I don't know if it's Dub, you know. And I meet this guy, and he says, you know, I don't use drugs anymore, but you're going to be eaten alive. I'll show you where it is. So it's a foggy memory, but he takes me down to Skid Row. I score some drugs, and which I think I had money enough for a dime. he waits for me outside this tent that he I guess, rented for me so I could smoke my heroin, and gets on the bus with me. And he's an African-American man. I never dated a black man before. I really had any experience with that. But he pulls some money out of his pocket and says, "Oh, I'm for real. Can I get your phone number?" And it's kind of awkward and kind of gauche, but also boyish and sweet. And I look at him and I think, man, I really don't want to get the esoteric check for this one. I think he must be like 26 years old. Come to find out, he was much older, but I said I would take his number and consider it. Well, it was on and cracking, so I started smoking crack and smoking heroin, and now I'm not in my own place anymore. The delivery guy isn't there. The left hand so he knows what the right hand's doing. Long story short, Andrew comes back to catch me in bed with another man. With me and Andrew, wow, that sounded so much less embarrassing in my head. Oh, man. Mind you, we were not boyfriend, girlfriend, but I do think there's really, goes against Miss Manners for sure, and that really is that's not really a good thing. Code of ethic, bad. Yeah, not good. So I ended up calling this person that I met, and he comes and rescues me. And I'm staying at a hotel, like not quite a crack hotel, but like a really crappy hotel. Now, I used to stay at the Bristol in Paris, right? Let's just say, this is for reference, come on, that was a billion-mile fall. People have been waiting for this billion-mile fall. I ended up following him down here, and within the first week of being down here, he gave me a black eye. Almost knocked me out cold. I thought a plane had went through the roof. It was 9 a.m, and what hurt the most was I was smiling at him. He said he thought I was laughing at him. He had been sober when I met him, but quickly started smoking crack with me. So I found a place to hide out, and I was trying to decide if I wanted to live or die. And it's kind of been Shawshank Redemption time ever since. And I felt embarrassed about the whole thing, and I felt like it was the last place anyone would ever look for me. And I thought I could fix it by myself. And I'll end it with this. People always say, God never gives you more than anything you can handle, right? I think you're saying something about someone saying that. To my understanding, the crux of the Bible is free will. This might seem like a non sequitur, but in any language, on any planet, in any vampire story, a vampire cannot enter unless they ask permission. So that's the front and the back of the matter. The only thing that I've figured out from these last, and I saw this over 2.5 years ago. And if I lied about it, I apologize. I've done things since then. This is all so embarrassing. But the only thing I've learned is that manners are the most important thing to me. And also that I really didn't need to learn this lesson.
All right, Cassandra, thank you very much for sharing this amazing story. I'd love to have you back again. We'll do it again. Because I think there's a lot more, right?
Yes.
This will be part 1.
Okay.
When you're ready, you come on back.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.